All right, it looks like it's 5:30 and time to begin. I'd like to welcome the Planning Commissioners, staff, and members of the public, both in person and online, to the Planning Commission meeting of Monday, August 8th, 2022. And before we start down the agenda, I'd like to just give the land acknowledgement. Don't do that every time, but feeling it today. The land that Eureka rests on is known in the Wiyot language as Jarajeje. Past actions by local, state, and federal governments remove the Wiyot and other indigenous peoples from the land and threaten to destroy their cultural practices. The city of Eureka acknowledged the Wiyot community, their elders both past and present, as well as future generations. This acknowledgement demonstrates the city's commitment to dismantle the ongoing legacies of settler colonialism. And then we move to roll call, please.
All right. Sorry, it's got to catch up with my clicking. Commissioner Benson?
Here.
Commissioner Freitas?
Here.
Commissioner Kraft?
Here.
Commissioner Lazar?
Here.
And Commissioner Meyer. Thank you.
We have a quorum, so let's move on to saluting the flag, and I'd like to ask Commissioner Kraft to lead us in that. Well, the next item on the agenda is the approval of our July 11th special planning meeting. The regular meeting of July 11th and the special meeting minutes of July 27th. Have the commissioners had time to look those over, or do we need to take a minute here to just briefly peruse?
I'll move approval of both sets of minutes.
I'll second.
Any comments or revisions to the meeting minutes? Okay, let's move for a vote. Approval of minutes. All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, oral communications. This is that opportunity that provides either commissioners or the public an opportunity to address the commission on any subject that's not on tonight's agenda. Anybody? I'll start with commissioners. Anything that you'd like to bring up or comment on tonight? Anyone from the public who are present in the chambers? Any comments on any topic not on the agenda? And online folk? Anybody wish to address the commission? Okay, seeing none, we'll move right into hearings tonight. Continued public hearings, and we have two new public hearings, and we'll start with Globe Imports variance. And do we have a staff report that we get to hear tonight on that?
Yes. Good evening, Commissioners. I will be presenting on the variance tonight. Our planning technician, Nay, worked on this project, and she's taking a much-deserved vacation before she starts grad school at HSU at the end of the month. So, oh, sorry about that. Got it. No, thank you for letting me know. Okay, so the project is proposed on the southern end of the Old Town Historic District and Coastal Zone, 3 blocks south of Humboldt Bay and 1 block north of 4th Street at the corner of 3rd and G Streets. Move this up away. Zooming in, the western portion of the site includes 2 structures, the 2-story Joseph Russ building and a 1-story metal building located in the rear of the parcel facing Opera Alley. The eastern portion of the site is currently undeveloped. The entire property is listed on the local register of historic properties. Here's a picture of the Joseph Russ building on the southwestern portion of the lot, which has 2 street-level tenant spaces currently occupied by a real estate, office, and internet radio station with professional offices on the second floor. Directly behind that building is a single-story metal building, which is currently occupied by a local commercial business. The vacant portion of the lot is the former site of the historic Russ Market building that was destroyed by fire in 2006. It has since remained undeveloped and is currently used to display public art. The applicant proposes to subdivide the parcel so that this vacant corner can be sold separately. As proposed, resultant parcel 1 would be 4,460 square feet and would cover the vacant portion of the lot, and resultant parcel 2 would be 6,430 square feet and would include the 2 existing buildings. The subject property is located in the commercial waterfront zoning district, and a variance to minimum lot size and width standards is necessary to allow for the subdivision. Uh-oh. Why did the...
We appear to have lost the screen, so let's take a minute and see if we can technically fix that. So stand by, people at home and folks here.
This screen stopped too. Do you think that has to do with it? That one's also not working.
I don't want to shut the program down. Can you just call IT?
If
And the screens went off. Hopefully the projector stopped for a second. Maybe that would kill me. Okay.
you guys can see the Zoom on your tablets, right? Oh, sorry, commissioners. Can you?
We're blank as well.
Oh, great.
Black screens. We do.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
It's situations like these that test our assumption that electronics and computer technology has made our lives easier.
I have no such assumption.
It'll shut everything down. That's what the ITs do. So we just do it, see what works. We can record from the Zoom, at least so they know what we're doing. Okay, so can you record from?
What's the recommendation from staff on how to proceed when we've had a chance as commissioners to review the report and we could get more of a verbal report on?
The project site is also important to note. It's located across the street from the inland downtown zone district. So properties across our street from it are in downtown, and downtown doesn't have a minimum lot size or lot width standard. And the hope is when we update the zoning code for the coastal zone or we probably wouldn't have those there either. So based on the findings included in the staff report, staff recommends the Planning Commission hold a public hearing and adopt a resolution approving the variance. And if the variance is approved by Planning Commission, then the minor subdivision will be subsequently acted on by the Development Services Director. And there's a suggested motion on the first page of the staff report. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you, and thank you for being prepared to do it in all conditions.
And I forgot to mention that the applicant looks like it is available on Zoom.
And could we won't be able to hear that, or we'll be able to hear it? Not.
You just can't see the screen.
Oh, I see. Okay. Okay. Before we move to public comment, I just want to check with commissioners and see who has questions of staff, and then we'll move right to public comment.
I just wanted to clarify, it seems to me that the parcel in its current size is ineligible for subdivision, and the variance is both to allow for a lot width and a reduction in lot size, right? Because 6,000 square feet is the minimum. Is that what you were saying?
Correct. So you would normally need a 12,000 square foot lot to meet minimum lot sizes.
Want to make sure about that. I think that's all I have for now.
Could you expand a little bit on why this is not privileged and that there's precedent around the area? I know you had a map to show us that, but could you describe maybe in words how many other properties have been granted this kind of variance in that area?
I don't know if all of the other substandard APNs were granted variances and that's why they're substandard. It might just be that they existed prior to our current code, because it's Old Town and a lot of things got developed before we adopted these modern code standards in the 60s.
Thank you.
And I think I heard you mention something about, when we update the LCP, the standards would be different, and that this is sort of, showing how we may be seeing projects be approved in future. Could you expand a little bit more on that, and if there is kind of a vision for standards in that zone and the timeline for seeing the LCP? I'm sure it's coming soon-ish.
Yeah, so currently in our inland code, there's no minimum lot size or lot dimension standards. And the hope is to make the coastal code similar to the inland code. And we're currently underway with the Waterfront Eureka plan, which includes Old Town, Library District, and Commercial Bayfront. And we're working on developing essentially new district standards for each of those through that specific plan, and then that's going to play into, we're going to try to adopt those as part of the LCP update.
Exciting. Thank you.
And does that mean they would no longer come to us as a variance and they would just be principally permitted?
Correct.
Mm-hmm.
Then if there was no minimum lot size standard, there would have been no need for a variance. They would have just come in for the minor subdivision to go from one lot to two. And it's in a categorically, it's in our CADX area, so that doesn't need we have a adopted CADX that subdivisions are considered development under the Coastal Act and require coastal development permit authorization, but we have a exemption for this particular geographic area for minor subdivisions.
Notice that in the staff report, it's where it's 5 or less. That's where you get to invoke the exemption.
Correct.
And I charted it out because I didn't see it in the staff report, but I made kind of a map of where the the parcels are that they reference. And it looks like, you know, there's two on the same block on the other side of G Street, on where the native daughters of the Golden West, those two paired buildings, and then on the block between the gazebo on the south side of Second Street, there's 3 lots in a row that are all substandard width, and one in the block between F Street and G Street on Second. So it's not exactly unprecedented as far as that neighborhood. You know, there are already, but I would agree with staff that it probably just been that way. They weren't divided to that. They were done before there was regulation of division.
Okay.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. Would I be correct in assuming that this is actually where we'd like Old Town to go? Is it
Yes.
like skinny, Victorian, funky little?
Yes. This keeping the same historic form of buildings next to each other, small scale, detailed, lots of storefronts in a small amount of space.
So it wouldn't change the development footprint that would be enabled by the subdivision. The subdivision wouldn't constrain the lot from being developed to a 0 lot line with the.
Because there's 0 setbacks here, adding a lot line doesn't affect how much you can get on the parcel.
Yeah, and I was thinking about that, and it seems to me like the only thing this does is change whether the development on this lot is owned by 2 parties or 1.
That's the conclusion that staff reached, is that the only thing that really is changing is the ability to sell this piece of the lot separately.
Okay, thanks for confirming that.
And if a variance is granted at such time where a plan is developed for that parcel, will that come back in front of the commission? No, it'll be principally permitted. Okay.
Yeah, if what they're proposing is principally permitted. If they're proposing any conditional uses, then you'll see it again.
I see. Okay, very good.
It will go before the Historic Preservation Commission.
Thank you, Principal Planner Getz. Any other initial questions from the commission? Well, I'd like to move it to public comment at this time. Well, why don't we start with people in-house, and then we'll move to Zoom after that. Anybody present who wishes to speak to the Globe Imports?
Yeah, good evening, Commissioners. My name's Michael Pulley. I'm the agent for the applicant, Will Adams, on this project. And really, I just want to say, I think you guys have touched on everything that is considered in asking for this variance. The parcels that Steve showed you where they're mapped, I basically only looked at the parcels surrounding our block to see which ones were substandard to the lot width and lot area standards. And so, like he said, it's not out of character. The whole point is to allow the lot to be separated and a separate owner to develop the parcel.
Thank you, Mr. Pulley. Anyone else in-house? Okay, and let's move to Zoom. Any public comment from Zoom?
Hi, this is Will Adams, applicant. Can you hear me?
We can hear you, Will, but if you could be a little louder, that would help.
Hi, Will Adams, applicant. I don't have much more to offer. I think the staff report kind of enumerated everything that we felt. They did a good job on it. So I'm here to answer any questions about, I guess, future development of the parcel.
Can you tell us a little bit about potential future plans for that site?
The idea would be to be mixed use. We'd have storefronts on the first story, and the upper stories would have residential.
Okay, very consistent with what's happening downtown. Thank you. Why don't you stand by in case there are any other questions? Any other questions for the applicant? Okay, just so you know, we also received a letter from Robert Maxon on behalf of a proponent of the project, Mr. Adams. Okay, let's move to any additional commission discussion on this.
Could you tell if there was anybody else trying to get in on Zoom? Obviously, we can't see it here, so.
There is not.
Okay. This feels right to me. I worked directly across the street for about a year and a half from this lot, and I think it does feel like Old Town. I also wish that Robert Maxson was on the call or in the room, because he is just such a good landlord. When I would get to work early, I'd see him out a couple days a week with his broom, cleaning stuff up. His properties are nice. It's very cool. So his support letter means an extra bit for me. I don't really have any questions or other things to dive into.
Mr. Chairman, sorry, for the record, have you closed the public hearing?
Thank you for keeping me consistent with the protocol. This concludes the public comment period and moving back to the commission. Thank you.
Yeah, I guess I'd just say it just seems like this is just caught in the sort of outdated code. We don't, the coastal zone certification process often stymies the code updates that would otherwise be more common, and so to me, it is unusual. I can't think of a situation in my professional experience where we give variances so that someone qualifies for subdivision, but given the development pattern, given the what the vision for Old Town is, as evidenced in the general plan policies or in the coastal plan policies, I don't feel uncomfortable, and it doesn't feel like a privilege, which is always the the difficult hurdle to clear with a variance. It doesn't feel like it's a unique situation amongst the neighborhood. So I'm prepared to support it, but if there's anybody else who wants to discuss it, I'll stop for now.
Thank you, Commissioner Lazar. I guess my one comment is that it seems a bit like a restoration of a space that was once occupied by the Russ Market building before the fire, and it's also in keeping with modern times. Just to quote from Robert Maxson's letter, there's a new urgency to move this forward now. It arrives in the form of the recently approved Earth Transit and Housing project, and he goes on to say how they feel that this will be complementary to that effort as well, which I like, that landowners are thinking about things around them as well. So I'm in favor of supporting this. Any other comments from commissioners?
I remember when it burned. I watched it burn that night, and I remember for weeks afterwards, because it was the meat market, man, the seagulls were just in hog heaven. It was incredible. So yeah, it's been a long time that it's that fallow. So I hope this will expedite its redevelopment.
Yeah, I agree with everything that has been said, and I've also been eyeing that parcel, waiting for redevelopment for many years, so I'm excited to see it come forward. And I think it's fair to say the commission would support similar projects in future at similar sizes and intensities, so I don't think it would be a granting of a special privilege. We're just waiting for the code to get updated. So I would be happy to make the motion.
Please do.
I move the Planning Commission adopt a resolution to conditionally approve the Globe Imports variance at 236 G Street, APN 001-091-006.
I'll be happy to second that.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Abstentions? Approved. Congratulations. Okay, we're moving ahead now to the Meharchand Vacation Rental Minor Use Permit. Do we also have a staff report on that project? Planner Kenyon?
Correct. Yes. Thank you, commissioners. Again, this one was another one done by our awesome planning technician that I am just taking for her because she's out. This particular property is just north of Harris Street near St. Joseph's and the zoo. Backing up. This item is a hearing on a minor use permit for a proposed vacation rental. And the property in question is on an interior lot on T Street between Wood and Harris Streets in the R1 residential low district. The 2,554 square foot parcel contains an existing one-story, 750 square foot single-family residence, which has one bedroom, and there is a detached two-story, 512 square foot building with a laundry room on the first floor and a bedroom with a bathroom on the second floor. And the applicant proposes to rent the entire property as one vacation rental. There will be no proprietor on site during rentals. In the R1 zoning district, a minor use permit is needed for a vacation rental with no proprietor on site. And the director approved a minor use permit on June 28th, allowing for a maximum occupancy of 6 guests, not including children aged 12 and under. And that comes from our vacation rental standards in the Eureka Municipal Code, which allows 2 persons per bedroom plus 2 additional persons. So this site has 2 bedrooms. So that would be 4 plus an additional 2, so 6 maximum occupancy. The code requires the applicant to identify an emergency contact within 50 miles of the property, and a designated emergency contact was provided who lives in Eureka. There is no on-site parking provided, and the applicant proposes to limit guests to 1 car per stay. Per the applicant, house rules include no noise after 8 p.m. on weekdays and 10 p.m. on weekends. And we want to note here there was a mistake in the staff report that accidentally stated quiet hours were from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. and 10 p.m. instead of the other way around. So after the minor use permit was approved by the director with conditions, a notice of action was subsequently mailed to all property owners within a 300-foot radius of the proposed use. And on July 7th, 2000, this year, a request to hold a public hearing with the Planning Commission was received, as provided by our code. So one of the concerns raised by the person requesting a public hearing is regarding the lack of proposed off-street parking. There isn't a place on site for parking on site, and as mentioned before, the applicant proposes to limit guests to 1 vehicle per stay. There is space in front of the house for on-street parking, and our vacation rental standards in our zoning code, they don't require. You can utilize an existing residence as a VR without on-site parking provided. The person who requested the public hearing also voiced concern that the owners of the site have been unresponsive or delayed in addressing issues with previous tenants. And we thought it was important to note that the vacation rental applicant did recently purchase the property in 2021. And also, as mentioned before, the applicant has provided a local emergency contact who lives in Eureka. And if this vacation rental gets final approval, their number will be provided to all property owners within 200 feet of the property and to the Eureka Police Department. And the vacation rental standards in the Eureka Municipal Code include detailed provisions for revoking vacation rental permits for being negligent or non-compliant, so that future issues can be promptly addressed. So because the public hearing was requested, the Planning Commission is now taking action on the minor use permit. And to approve the use permit, you must find that the proposed use is consistent with the general plan and zoning code. The project site is suitable for the use. The use is compatible. I didn't write all of this down. Oh, it's going to be on my slide. The use is compatible. It's in the staff report. Let me open it up.
Page 1 of
Yeah, it's page 4 of the staff report. The proposed use will be compatible with existing and planned land uses in the vicinity of the property. The proposed use will not be detrimental to the public health, safety, and welfare. The proposed use is properly located within the city and adequately served by existing and planned services and infrastructure. So as discussed in the director's staff report, staff believes these findings can be made and recommends that Planning Commission hold a public hearing and approve the minor use permit with conditions. And I want to note that on the staff report, I'm noticing that the action says I hereby adopt, and because it didn't get changed from when it was the director's action. So it should be I move the Planning Commission adopt a resolution to conditionally approve. And that's the end of my report.
Thank you, Planner Kenyon. I'd like to have initial questions from the commission for staff and then before we move to public comment.
I have just one quick question. The proposal to limit one car per stay, was that from the staff or from the applicant?
The applicant proposed that, and it wasn't added as a condition to the director approval, but it was discussed in the staff report as part of the project that was being approved.
Thanks.
And I have a follow-up question. So I noticed the 4 conditions in the draft resolution, and what I guess I was surprised was I saw the sort of shadow of what the applicant was offering as a sort of operations plan or something that must have been an exhibit, and like the limiting the number of vehicles. And so it seems to me that the resolution should bind them to an operations plan or some statement, some commitments that were written out, and that should be referenced in the conditions, that you'll stay consistent with that. And I didn't see that. I saw condition 1's regarding a business license. Number 2 is referencing the development standards. And then number 3 is getting the TOT tax, and 4 references the 6 persons limit. So it seems to me like if we were to approve it tonight and hold them to those commitments, then we need to make sure that's referenced in the conditions. I don't know if we can craft something on the fly, but does that make sense? Or I mean, I get the idea that it's described or disclosed in the staff report, but I think the resolution should reflect that. But I'm open to being convinced otherwise. Not much of a question, but see what you want to do with it.
I don't know if you were asking a question. I would say if that is an important provision for approving it, then, I think you have a good point.
I think we could easily add it to one of the whereases, like as incorporated by reference. It would be pretty straightforward.
I have a more general question. In the history of this residential unit, was off-street parking ever required or asked of the landowner? I'm assuming not, because it doesn't appear to be any space in the map for that.
Sorry, Commissioner Benson, are you asking if they ever had to provide parking on site for their house, or if...
Never been requested of them in the past. Maybe that's something you don't know specifically.
Yeah, that is a good question. We noticed that this lot was smaller than the surrounding lots, so we did some background research to make sure that we believed it was a legal lot. And I believe on their site plan, they show that the back unit, which isn't a complete unit, it's just a bed bath, was done in the 80s. But I don't recall seeing anything about, I wasn't looking specifically for whether in the past there was some parking requirement triggered or not.
So per your research, it appears that there's no change.
Correct.
To any other condition from the past. Okay.
I have 2 questions. One, I'm still learning about vacation rental units, and I remember from a recent meeting that we had house rules referred to in another case. Are there any teeth with respect to the city with those? If somebody says, I'm going to have house rules that say you can't make noise after 10, you have to only have 1 car, what happens if the operator or the landlord just doesn't enforce that?
They would be in violation of the regulations.
So,
If their application included that they were going to do these things and their application were approved as submitted, then those would be part of the requirements for the park.
sort of getting at what Commissioner Lazar was saying, we're incorporating those house rule commitments into the approval.
Correct.
Okay, cool.
And clearly laying it out in the resolution is certainly acceptable.
Okay. And then different, so we have a new owner as of 2021, and you mentioned the emergency contact. Are we saying that the former potentially non-responsive situation was under the old owner? Do we know that?
We don't know that for sure. We just know that, you know, the complaint was that they'd been non-responsive in the past, and we know that the property transferred owners
Okay.
recently.
And do you have any take on the emergency contact?
No, I don't know anything about them. I just know that they were identified in Eureka, and that once there's a final approval, we send out a postcard to all the property owners, all the properties within 200 feet, to let them know that this is the emergency contact if there's any issues.
Okay.
And if that emergency contact is non-responsive, then that too would be a violation of their permit and could be resolved.
All right. Beautiful. Thank you.
Well, I'll save this for discussion after a motion. If anyone is ready to make a motion. Yeah, thank you. Having to keep me on track tonight. Okay, all right. Let's move to public comment. Let's start with folks who have come tonight in person. Any public comment on this project?
Hello, Commissioner and Commission. My name's Gerald Elkin, and I live around the corner from the property, and I've lived there for a few years. It's a small unit, 1 bedroom, 1 bath, that has a converted garage. The unit's built above what was the garage, and the people that live there often parked in it, but it would be, I would say, hazardous because you'd have exhaust fumes going right up to the unit above it. So I presume they've stopped using that. But the problem we've had is there's cars that come and go. Often there's two. There's not a lot of parking on that street. People park in the wrong direction, so when you come around at night, you don't see their taillights, you just see the headlights of a car. And it's awkward. I mean, it's a residential neighborhood. We all know each other. We all know who's supposed to be there and who's not. And now I haven't seen people come there, but they have been totally non-responsive. When you call about a complaint, I don't want to be the police officer on my block. And I certainly don't want to bother EPD about people having noise or parking 3 cars in front. It's very limited parking. There's just off of Harris as you come, and then there's an alleyway that the garbage trucks use. So there's not a lot of parking for 2 cars. There's often 2 cars there. I could have brought pictures of them, but there's the one from Tennessee, and then there's a black Tesla that's often there. And it's just not like in our neighborhood, we know everybody who comes and goes. There are renters in our neighborhood, and they're vested in the community. These people, you sometimes hear them, or they'll drive away, or they're not vested in the community. We don't know what's going on. And the rear rental, if you saw it, I don't know if it's legally safe or not, but it's very awkward to even go up the back stairways, which is from outside, because the garage is there. So you have to enter it from the backyard through the house and then up to the stairs. I don't know if it was just a rental, it'd be fine in our neighborhood, but to have like an extended stay or an Airbnb, it's really inappropriate for that area. But that's about all I have to say is thank you. Your concerns, by the way, are exactly mine. So I don't know what I need to say. I think you guys fully understand the area and what's going on. I don't know how you enforce it is what bothers me, is when there's 2 cars there. I call EPD. EPD does 90 calls an hour. They have much more to do than, or I have to come back as the lone variance because the people who answer the phone go, I don't want to talk to you anymore, or don't bother to pick up or don't return your calls. I don't want to be the cop of the neighborhood, and I don't want to bother EPD or anybody else. I mean, we've all gotten along fine for years. It's just an awkward space. And I don't think it's appropriate for the use they have. That's all I have to say. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Elkin. Other speakers with us today? Members of the public who would like to address this?
We have one person on Zoom.
Okay, there's one person on Zoom. We're ready to hear you.
Melanie, if you'd like to unmute and speak.
Melanie, it looks like you're muted.
She's not.
Okay, thank you. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Commissioners, city staff, and neighbors as well. I'm Melanie Maharshand. I'm the applicant, and this is my husband, Salvin Pillay. We're the owners. There's just one minor correction that I would make to the timing of our purchase. We actually purchased this property at the end of April this year in 2022. So we've only owned it for this period of time. Any rentals, we understand it was a rental property previously. And so we can't speak to how it was managed previously. My understanding is that it was a long-term rental previously. And so the rules for long-term rentals are really quite different. In terms of, I'll just give you a really brief, I did write public comment into the commission, so you might have seen my letter, but just for the sake of others who are in the room, if I could just share a little bit about ourselves. My husband and I, we live in the Bay Area in Sausalito, where we're calling in from right now. We have a family, 2 daughters and a dog, and our hope is to spend time here in retirement. The Tesla is ours. We've been there many times, you know, getting the house ready and making it beautiful the way we love to live in it, because that's how we think of it. And we've spent time getting to know our neighbors as well. I'm so sorry that we haven't, to the neighbor who spoke, I'm so sorry that we haven't had a chance to meet in person yet, but I hope that we will get a chance to as well. I'd love to extend an invitation for us to speak together. If you want to contact me, I'd be happy to share my contact information. Our intention for the vast majority of the time is to actually rent to traveling medical professionals who work at the hospital. So I think that is part of what I think is some of the difficulty in bridging between vacation rental versus when it's vacation rental versus over 30-day rental. So when we have a vacation rental person staying, which we think would largely be in the summer, we just want to do everything in a very compliant, permitted way. So although we don't intend to do vacation rentals for the vast majority of the time, if we were to do anything for less than 30 days, we'd certainly want to have a permit to do so. But I think you'll find that for the vast majority of the time, we will have people from the hospital who are staying for at least 2 or 3 months at a time. And that's what we have at the moment. So we have a pharmacy technician staying with us, and we have a nurse staying with us. And so they have 2 cars with them. I think it might be difficult for our neighbors, but they're staying for over 30 days. So that's the only reason why I understand your point about wanting to bind us to the rules for 30-day rentals. And we're very happy to be able to, I apologize for barking. We're very happy to be able to tell our less than 30-day guests that they can only bring 1 car. We cannot tell guests who are staying for longer than 30 days to do that legally. We don't have a right to do that as landlords.
Mrs. Mayor Harchand, I'm sorry, but your 3 minutes have ended. I'm sorry to be abrupt in following that protocol, but we did receive your letter.
I understand.
And read through it. Thank you. Any other public comment on Zoom? Is that the only? Okay, let's now close public comment and move it back to the commission. I have maybe a larger issue related to vacation rentals that I just would like some clarity on in terms of being a planning commissioner, and this is one of those types of projects that brings other questions to mind. What I'm seeing right now in the housing element of the general plan is, and staff has come to us and said that there's this goal of getting 480 more units by 2027, and those are not vacation units; those are housing units, residential housing units. It's in that table 53 in the housing tech appendix, and so that's 480 units taken out. I just went online today just to do brief research, and I won't, I didn't fact check all the numbers, but looking at realestate.com, Zillow.com, apartments.com, apartmentrentguide.com, what I found out about Eureka is that houses for sale in Eureka right now is about 99. I know that changes on an hourly basis. Apartments for rent in Eureka, 26. Houses for rent in Eureka, 7. So there are about 132 places are available to rent in Eureka. And then the number of vacation rentals, looking at VRBO website and Airbnb website in Eureka, are 246. So that's almost twice as many places available for vacation rentals as residential long-term or month-to-month, type rentals or lease situations. And so that just was sort of a shocking number to me, that there are 246 vacation rentals available and only 132 places that people can go to. So I guess what I'm looking to have a conversation about, and maybe not tonight, this doesn't have to be the lightning, the lightning rod for this issue, but as a planning commissioner, I'm just curious. Again, I'm the guy who always brings this up. How many cannabis places should we have? How many fast food places should we have? How many vacation rentals ought we have in Eureka? And the answer I continue to get is that it's market driven, and that we have to approve things or that fit the zoning code and haven't broken any ordinances. But these sort of larger questions sort of hang out there. And I know that that's more for city council than for the planning commission. But I just felt I felt the need to comment on that today, that there's so many. And I wonder if staff has any, comment back to us on that.
Yeah, I think as a planning commission, one of your duties is recommending legislative changes, so you definitely, it's in your purview to recommend changes to our code to city council. Our housing element includes an implementation policy about vacation rentals, and we're in the midst of implementing it. And the first step was to track all of the vacation rentals citywide. So for a few years now, we've had this this service that is tracking vacation rentals for us and identifying where they are in the city. And I was surprised by your number, because the number we're getting back from them is like a maximum of 118. I think it's in the staff report, that they look at all the different advertising platforms and use Street View and stuff to identify locations and track them. And so our plan is we're going to be doing a compliance drive, and the ones that aren't permitted and aren't paying TOT are going to be getting letters from us telling them how to come into compliance, and that they're out of compliance. And our hope was to go back to city council after that to see where we're at. And then, but our code has built into it currently that city council could establish a cap on the number of vacation rentals with no proprietor on site. And they really just need to adopt a resolution to do that, because it's already in the code that they can do that. So they could do that at any time, really. And but it would be limited to the inland code vacation rentals, and they're not called vacation rentals in mixed use districts. They're called commercial lodging, even if they're in a house. So it would really just apply to the R1, R2, R3 zones, and it would just apply to with the proprietors not on site. We could always make an amendment as well to limit them further, but that's currently how it's set, so that the city council could really set a cap when they wanted to.
Has the council ever indicated a disinterest in setting a cap?
No, they've seemed interested in doing that. And staff has been recommending that we get through this compliance drive first to see where we're at. We do know, that there's over 12,500 residential units in the city, and so we're at a pretty low percentage of vacation rentals compared to other coastal cities. But Commissioner Benson is right that there are very limited number of houses to buy or rent here, so everyone is important.
Yeah, I would think that number that I got off the internet through VRBO and Airbnb may have included places all the way out as far as Indianola and Humboldt Hill, and maybe all those aren't in the city, and 118 may be more accurate, but still that's close to 50%, between what's available for long-term rental and what's a commercial lodging. So I would be interested in having staff do a minor amount of research, just looking at what's happened in other towns like Trinidad, around this, what the likely fallout of not having any limits might be in our future, and just to educate the commission about that.
Well, and just to let you know, also, recent changes in state law have actually prohibited accessory dwelling units that are finalized after January 1st of 2020 from being used for short-term rentals, and any units that are created as a result of SB 9 also cannot be short-term rentals.
I recall
So
that, yeah.
all of those are off the table. It would have to be things that were approved prior to 2020.
So that's likely to move it this way.
A little bit.
Yeah, thank you for the reminder on that. Other comments or questions from the commission?
We're trying to think how to phrase this. So the applicant on Zoom mentioned having, kind of three interests: an interest in being here herself with her husband longer term, the short-term medical professionals that they're renting to now, and vacation rental, classically speaking. The second and third uses, do those conflict at all? Is this, so what we're taking under consideration now is only that third use, right? So it doesn't change the two cars that park there now and that kind of thing. Okay.
We're just looking at being able to allow them the ability to rent to people for 30 days or less. Right now, they can only do more than that, long-term rentals.
In the staff report, it makes note that there's been, let's see. Oh, I guess it doesn't distinguish. So do we know how many we've approved permits for vacation rentals?
Yeah, we've approved about 35, but a lot of those aren't actually active now. So it's even less of the active ones that we've actually permitted.
But we haven't captured a large percentage of the market. It seems like there's a lot out there.
There's a lot out there that aren't paying TOT, and frankly owe a lot of TOT to the city.
Also, this is just something that dawned on me, and I think it gets to Commissioner Kraft's question and comment, is that to the neighbors' concerns about the way that the property has been occupied and the sort of impact of parking in the neighborhood, by making it a short-term rental, it could potentially bind the amount of burden on on-street parking by committing them to this one vehicle per, rental situation that would otherwise would not govern the other two types of uses, like a private residence or a rental that's not short-term. But it is sort of, they're looking for like a cocktail of options, a lot of different things that they can do, and we don't know what that will actually materialize into. But insofar as if they make it mostly a vacation rental, it could help with the neighborhood parking burden, potentially, if they abide by what they're committing to. Does that sound correct? I mean, is that your guys' take as far as a benefit to this?
What I'm hearing from the applicant is they mostly want to rent it month to month to medical professionals, and that perhaps the summertime is that window where some kind of commercial lodging might be more appropriate. But we can't hold them to that. That's opportunistic.
Yeah, I would just like to weigh in and say that, I'm definitely supportive of the idea of a cap on vacation rentals, but I'm not supportive as a commissioner of not approving this permit. And, parking that's not provided on site could potentially impact the neighborhood, but it's also the public right of way. It's not anybody's parking. It's the community's parking, regardless of whether or not they live here. It's public property. And it sounds like the owner is doing what they can to reduce the burden to the neighbors. And I think if we were to not approve it, it would be limiting their ability to use their property similar to other property owners in the city. I don't think we really would have a leg to stand on to do that.
Any other comments from commissioners?
I think Commissioner Freitas is correct with that summation. That, you know, this is consistent with the code. It's the applicant's doing what they're being asked to do. They look to have some ongoing work to do with the neighbors, but sounds like they have the emotional intelligence to do that. So I'm ready to vote.
I was going to add one thing about parking that to Commissioner Benson's question for staff, as far as like whether there was ever requirements explicit in the code, I don't know, but as far as off-street parking, but for someone who lives here and has lived here, I would say that the vast majority, I would say upwards of 30 to 40% of the houses in the city limits do not have off-street parking, regardless of how they're occupied.
It's true.
So it's certainly not, you know, out of keeping with what is the reality. This is a developed city that has, you know, housing stock that predates zoning requirements to a large extent. So, and that development pattern often comes without off-street parking or very limited off-street parking. So yeah, I think I don't get quite as hung up on that, even though it is an especially with the commitment that I'm hearing. So if we were to take action, I would support it as well, but I would like to see that the commitments that we heard reference to in the staff report be included in the reference in the resolution and bound and made binding on their operation as a vacation rental. And I guess I would just ask staff, is there an exhibit or something that was received that's in the project record that could be referenced, like a plan of operation or some kind of materials that where this was all described?
We can just add conditions of approval that contains that information. It was in their application.
Are you looking to, sorry, I just need a clarification. Are you looking to just include the parking one or also the quiet hours one?
Yeah, I'd like to, anything that they were volunteering, I would like to have referenced.
So they're good guest guide, basically. Okay.
Principal Planner Getza, is the chair allowed to make a motion? Okay.
Yes.
I move that the Planning Commission adopt a resolution to conditionally approve the minor use permit for the vacation rental at 3015 T Street, incorporating the guest guide references by the applicant.
I'll second
that.
Any further discussion for the commission? Let's put it to the vote. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Abstain. Motion passes. Give me a moment to scroll back. Yeah, thank you. All right, we have no old business or new business reports and communications. Directors' reports and communications, none. And I think we move then right to adjournment. Doesn't take a motion to do that. We are hereby adjourned. Thank you, staff.